Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Hey, it's William, and welcome to today's episode of the Catalytic Leadership Podcast. Each week, we tackle a topic related to the field of leadership. My goal is to ensure that you have actionable steps you can take from each episode to grow in your own leadership. I believe, like Craig Rochelle has said many times, that when a leader gets better, everybody benefits. Your team, your department, your customers, your clients, your spouse, your kids, everybody. Each week, we spotlight leaders from a variety of fields, locations, and organizations. My goal is for you to see that leaders can be catalytic no matter where they are or what they lead. I draw inspiration from the stories and journeys of these leaders, and I hear from many of you that you do too. Let's jump in to today's interview. It is such an honor today to have Dr. Benjamin Ritter on the podcast. Ben is the founder of Live for Yourself Consulting, a leadership and career coach, a talent development executive, a values geek, an international speaker, an online course instructor, and a podcaster. Whew. I don't know if I could get all that in one breath. Who is passionate about guiding leaders to be the leader of their own career, to create a career that they love. Ben, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me. Looking forward to diving into a bunch of things around leadership, maybe even define what leadership means to both of us.
And that is going to be one of my first questions. But first, I want to start by letting you introduce yourself a little bit. I'd love for you to share some of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
So I did not actually think I was going to work in the field of leadership, organizational, and talent development. That is something that developed over time, which if anyone listening has experienced some career pivots or transitions, you'll understand as well. It's usually not a straight shot. And
true.
I was even asked the other day, says, Ben, what do you want to do now? And you have a great business in leadership and career coaching. You have a pretty good selection of corporate clients and partnerships. And I go, look, I don't really know. Like an opportunity may come up tomorrow or even right after this conversation that allows me to live more true to my values and maybe in a greater financial way or with more freedom or something else that aligns with what I truly care about. And as long as I get to do the work that I love doing, that really represents who I am and the change I want to see in the world, I want to do more of that. And that's really what leaders should also be focusing on. How do we curate environments that align with the interests of their employees, as well as how do they curate a work environment for themselves that does the same? Now, this ideology really came from my own experiences working as an executive in healthcare and through a lot of my other experiences as a professional, as an entrepreneur working odd jobs and different spaces. But specifically when I was in healthcare, I was pretty resentful towards my work, towards my boss, towards my organization, towards some of my coworkers. And this developed basically through a variety of different situations. But overall, I had a lot of disappointments in my career. Didn't feel like I chose the path that I was on and didn't really like the work that I was doing. And I was waiting for my organization to fix it. I was waiting for my leaders to do something other than, dictate and criticize. And at the same time, I was highly regarded as a high achiever. I was promoted into an executive level role. I was selected for 16 months of leadership training. And so it was like this weird kind of like just strange, double-sided situation where on one end, I'm being highly regarded, but on the other end, I feel completely disengaged. And I go, how is this possible? How are the leaders not noticing this and helping this situation? Why is it that people are coming to my office crying and bawling? And how is it that that I feel like I'm really wasting my time? And luckily, I woke up one day, I kind of realized this strange situation I was in was partially created by myself, actually largely created by myself. And that made me take a really hard look at, well, how do I take back control of my career? How do I become a little bit more proactive instead of reactive? And I did a career audit. I took a look at what I loved, what I was passionate about, what excited me, stopped playing the victim. And lo and behold, coaching and leadership and talent development was was there just staring right at me, slapping me in the face. It was, I had 16, I was in the 16 months of leadership training. I had my own coach. I was connected with the director of people who I respected highly as my mentor. I was angry at the leadership capabilities of my leadership, and wanted to make sure that high achievers did not stay in this disengaged mode and waste away their career and not build career capital. And then on my side hustle as an entrepreneur and just my own interests were in personal and professional development. And I basically was growing and managing a coaching company at the time. And I was like, okay, hold on a second. I can do this for an organization. This is possible. This industry exists. Well, how do I go do it? And that was really the spark and start of my career back in 2015 to start pivoting and build a business, which was not my first idea in this space, but lo and behold, it took off. And now I'm incredibly happy with what I'm doing. But I also worked internal for a bit within this space too. And so kind of got to be able to work, in the nuts and bolts of an organization and see how like talent acquisition and talent development and people operations operate. And that's really been helpful just from working with clients, external organizations too.
It's so true what you said. This was not something that you anticipated, expected, and it wasn't just a straight up and to the right shot, right? And that's true of so many stories that I hear in talking with leaders. I was looking at your background as I was researching a bit more about you for this interview. You have an MPH in health policy administration. You have an MBA in entrepreneurial management, and you have a doctorate in organizational leadership. That is pretty impressive. And
they all go together so well, right?
Yeah, that's the next thing I was going to say. That's a very interesting combination. I would love, from the perspective that you've just described in your journey and from those educational perspectives, I would love to hear how you would define leadership.
Well, so you can't be a leader without followers.
Yeah.
But leadership is not a title. And I think everyone has heard that before. But more specifically, in regards to how I work with clients, I focus heavily on self-leadership. So I define leadership as the ability to curate an environment that motivates and empowers others to lead themselves.
I love that.
Because all leadership is self-leadership. No matter what you do, no matter how convincing or persuasive you are, someone's not going to be making a decision unless they make that decision themselves. They're not going to take action unless they want to take action themselves. They're not going to feel something specifically unless they choose to feel that emotion themselves. They're not going to be able to define what that feeling means to them, based on what you think and say. So as a leader, we have to really get personal. We have to curate a presence that connects with the people in front of us. We have to know their purpose. We have to know what their likes and dislikes are. And then if you don't, then you're just not going to be as effective. And in regards to like my background in entrepreneurship and health policy and in organizational leadership, I say they all have different influences on my perspectives and who I am today. But the definition of leadership has come, also from my own personal experiences and how I've been successful in my life and how I've seen my clients be successful in life. The concept of personal empowerment and accountability. So basically, you are responsible for your own success in life and you are empowered. You don't need permission from anyone else other than yourself, is really at the core of self-leadership. And if we were to look at individuals that feel stuck or feel stressed and maybe are wondering how they got into the situation that they are in and aren't sure how to fix it, well, you'd say that they don't feel empowered and they don't feel accountable, and they're lacking in certain traits of self-leadership, which would be clarity, confidence, and control. And as a leader, your responsibility for your reports is to help them create clarity, confidence, and control, and to represent that and be a role model of those pillars as well.
I love that. I love that you started with self-leadership, because I think you're right. You can't lead somebody where you haven't gone personally. You can't give them what you don't have. But I love the others-centered approach of your leadership definition there, that you focus on the people that you're leading, helping to equip them, helping to empower them. You're seeing them as actual 3D human beings, not just cogs in a machine to accomplish a task. And you want to lift them up. You want to empower them and equip them and encourage them, because that's what a leader does. I love that definition, and I love your 3 pillars.
Shouldn't you just be able to tell them what to do, though? Why does it take all this work?
I mean, I think that was a model that was passed down generation to generation. I'm not sure it ever worked, and I'm confident it wasn't leadership. But there's a whole lot of people who received that because that's what they saw, that's what they experienced, and that's what they have replicated. Because so often that's what we do. We do what we see, we do what we experience. I just don't think that's leadership. I think that's something else.
Well, how would we define that?
That
This
self-centered
authoritative
leadership.
dictatorship.
Yeah, authoritative dictatorship.
Like,
I like that. Yeah.
That someone should do what I tell them to do because they were hired to do a job. And if they want to keep that job, they should do the thing that I am telling them to do.
Yeah, this is
it's
the
like
model.
A power play.
Right. This is the model where you sit in the corner office and you just send out memos, right? You send out instructions so that all the minions will do your bidding. I mean, that's a model. It's just not a leadership model. You talk about being proactive instead of reactive in your career. I think your story illustrates a lot of that. What do you say when you talk with clients about this, about moving from being reactive to proactive?
So we have to spend our time in clarity first.
Hmm.
So I've made some mistakes where I put all my eggs in one basket and the basket wasn't a real basket. It had some holes in the bottom. Didn't really make much sense when you took a step back and take a real hard look at it. That basket was influenced by limiting beliefs, social pressures, societal pressures. Mm-hmm. And so when we spend our time to get clarity, we can really figure out where we actually want to invest our time. We can put a plan to action, or make a plan so we can take action, and really figure out if what we want to work on truly aligns with who we are and matters to us. And too often people are reactive because they haven't taken the time to figure out what they really want, and they don't believe that they deserve it or can achieve it. And so that's why the second C is confidence. But a lot of times you see this even in just career development. So people wait for a promotion, or they wait till they're really tired of their job to ask for a promotion, instead of constantly having a career development conversation with their manager. Or they don't give feedback about something they dislike to a peer or to a direct report or to a leader because they're afraid of what that might, how they might be perceived. Maybe they don't feel actually skilled enough to give that feedback, but then that builds into resentment, into potentially them blowing up within the workday, or maybe they just end up quitting because they can't take it anymore instead of being proactive to fix where they're currently at. Or maybe it is even just looking for a new job. You see this all the time, people going to job boards and applying to jobs. Some people might define that as proactive. I say you're basically at the whim of whoever decides to list a job on a job board, and whoever decides to list on that job board, and whatever somebody paid to list their job on that job board, instead of really defining what you want to create in your career and who you want to work for, and putting the time in to build some relationships in that space, to network, to show your worth and your value, to really highlight what your brand is, and then to go for that opportunity. And so when it comes to our career, we very much live in a world of reaction. And the people that succeed, like you'll see it, they're proactive. They've taken their role as a leader, as well as their role in their career as the owner of their career, and are paving the paths forward instead of waiting to see what path gets laid.
Is this something that you coach your clients around?
100%. Now, whatever it is that they want to achieve. So part of clarity is understanding who you are, yes, but then aligning your goals to match who you are. So who you are, your values, and at your core, and this can be your leadership vision. That's an important kind of filter to make sure that what you're working on is going to bring you greater levels of fulfillment and satisfaction, and be less stressful, and allow you to create an environment around yourself that is a little bit more easier to work in. And when you can get that level of clarity, then you can figure out, well, so that's your why. You can figure out the what and the how. The what and the how can constantly change based on the opportunities you have in front of you or the opportunities that you can create. And so first you may set some goals up. Let's say I want to get promoted in this organization to XYZ position. Okay, wonderful. We have that goal specifically, and we've identified why it matters to you and what impact you want to have. But let's say for some reason the organization, puts on has some budget cuts and they go through a hiring freeze, or maybe you even get laid off. So your what and your how has now changed. So it's not anymore this role in an organization. We potentially have to find a different role in an organization, or maybe your own business that allows you to create the same impact. Maybe it's even a volunteer role, something that you do in your free time, or maybe it's a relationship with someone that's doing that you build, that you can create the same value from that experience for yourself to feed that part of who you are.
I think that's brilliant. And I love the proactive nature of it. You're being so intentional in how you're assessing where you are, where you want to go, and what are you going to do specifically to get you there beyond just throwing darts at a dartboard with job listings.
And even in an organization, I'm going to work hard and then I'm going to move up in the organization because, I owe it to the organization to work hard and they're going to value my hard work. And that's not how things go.
Yeah.
A company, no matter how loyal you are to a company, if something happens and they're on the bottom line, that you may be out the door. And no matter how hard you work, if the right people don't know about your work, good luck. Good luck getting a promotion or a raise passed, depending on how the organization structures that. And so part of this is also like understanding how the organization, like how it works within an organization, right? How to put the spotlight on yourself, how to create relationships. A lot of it is actually being curious. And that's where confidence comes in. So if we don't believe in ourselves or in our skills, we're not going to take advantage of opportunities or try to create opportunities or get curious about our profession to be able to create, right, and be more successful with what we actually want to work towards. Because then when we come up against something that doesn't work out the way that we want to, maybe I see this a lot in a performance review, a leader gets some constructive feedback that they don't agree with, or 360 feedback they don't agree with. It crushes them and it prevents them from wanting to continue taking action in their what and their how, because they feel like now they're limited, when in actuality you're not limited. You just got some more information that you now have to plan around, because who you are hasn't changed based on that feedback. But too often people take that feedback and they allow it to impact their self-identity because they're not confident and they're not certain on who they are as a leader.
Talk a lot about database decision making, and I think that's so important when it comes to your leadership. But like you're describing, sometimes we can take one data point and we can begin to expound and extrapolate from that in such a way that it's just completely unrealistic. I had a friend say once, many years ago, you cannot paint the Mona Lisa from one data point. And I think he's spot on. But so often that's what we do. You get that performance review that's not good, or there's a comment or a section in there that just completely just knocks the wind out of you. And you paint the Mona Lisa there. I mean, you're just coming out with, well, clearly I can never, I will always. And anytime we never and always, that can get unhealthy really fast. You talk about leadership is not actually about leading. I've seen you write and speak and say this. Help me understand what you mean there. Why is leadership not about leading?
Leading seems like such a action word, doesn't it? Like I'm doing something to someone.
Yeah.
And I guess we're kind of spinning words here, right? We're just kind of, for the sake of maybe sparking some interest in minds and causing people to click on the title of an article. But going back to the definition of leadership being self-leadership, being able to curate an environment for individuals. So when you're leading, you really have to almost, it's leading like makes me think about pulling people somewhere. When in actuality, leadership is kind of being in the muck with people, or even potentially being behind them and knowing what's ahead. Like, what's ahead, you're preparing people for what's ahead, but you're also figuring out how best they want to move forwards. So leading to me sounds like I'm going to chop the trees down in front of you and pave the way. But leadership is really saying, okay, we have to get to that point over there. These are the tools that we have. How would you like to get there? And so that's where I'm kind of torn from the leading, verb, is that it doesn't imply that I'm not carrying people on my, it implies that I'm carrying people on my back and moving forwards, when in actuality, that's not what you're doing. You're
I mean,
helping
the
them move
leader
towards
doesn't
themselves.
have all the answers.
Well, the problem is they think they do, right? So this is like the difference between coaching and advice. And
Yeah.
two of my favorite books are The Coaching Habit and The Advice Trap.
Mm.
And too often a leader thinks that being a leader is telling people exactly what to do. And then all of a sudden you're wondering why you're overworked, you're burnt out, and people aren't doing what you expect them to. Right? I see you resonate with that.
That's so true. I've seen that in my own journey, and I have seen that in so many clients. Exactly what you just said. So true. You've mentioned several times curating an environment. You believe environments matter?
100%. So I conduct corporate workshops on the team model of managing to motivate. This is a framework I developed initially for the city of Chicago when they asked me to come in and train their leaders, and for the business affairs and consumer protection department. And it's something that has stayed with me in my work since then. Very early on, I created a model that focuses on trust, environment, actual work, and meaning, on how to curate that environment for the people that work for you, people that are under your care. And so trust is just about the relationship itself. You're not going to be able to lead anyone if they don't trust you, period.
Yeah.
And so you can go over a variety of different tactics and strategies to build trust, but that I'm just going to go over them quickly, and then we can dive into any of them. And then you have to focus on the environment. The environment encompasses the social relationships as well as the tools that the person has to do their work. So social relationships are huge in terms of, are they draining or are they energizing? Is there conflict, or do people feel like family? It's a lot of reason why on engagement surveys you get that question that's like, do you have a best friend at work? Which is a terrible way of asking the question, but some people might remember that question. And what it's asking about is, do you feel energized by the people that you work with? And the other aspect of environment resources is just like, does someone have a good webcam? Do they have good internet? Do they have a stapler that they need because they're stapling papers all day? Or maybe better yet, do they have a machine that automatically staples? Or better yet, do they have a printer that automatically staples? And so I know that's a kind of a silly, light example of resources, but tools, but those are critical. If someone doesn't have enough pens, but they need pens for their job, they're going to be stressed and be angry at the organization for not having pens. And it's so often forgotten. Do people have what they need to do to actually do their job? The actual work relates to work that aligns with the person's interests, and work that someone feels confident in doing and that someone feels like is a challenge at the same time. So there's this balance between someone needing to feel competent in their work so that they're capable of doing it, and at the same time feel like they're actually learning. And often leaders just tell people what to do without actually figuring out how they want to do the work, which can be all the difference, and what they hate doing, to see if maybe they could stop doing it, delegate it, or change how they do it. It will make a huge difference in people's levels of job satisfaction, motivation, and engagement. And the final piece is meaning. Do your direct reports understand why you care about your job, why you care about the organization, what impact the organization is having, what impact their work is having? And do you as a leader understand why they're working there? Is it because they have 3 kids in college and they need to pay their way? and it's the closest, it allows them the comfort of actually spending time with their kids before they leave. Well, you better figure out what that meaning is when those kids leave the house. Or is it because they actually care about the organization and the work, looking at healthcare and individuals that provide clinical care to patients? You better be highlighting that, because man, work can get overwhelming and stressful, and that person's going to say, why haven't I taken my lunch break today? I can't believe no one actually cares or recognizes my hard work. And so as a leader, you have to be there providing those positive remarks around meaning, that relate to meaning, that inspire meaning, that highlight meaning to the individuals that work for you. And if you can do those pillars to create that environment for your direct reports, they're going to stay, or at least you're going to know when they're leaving. And you're going to be happy for them because you've developed that trusting relationship and they've given you their all, and all you want is them to continue being successful in their career.
Ben, that is such a great model. I think that's just brilliant, and I hope our listeners are writing these down. I certainly am. This is something that is so helpful because it's focused again on the people that you're leading. Are you equipping? Are you resourcing? Are you creating that environment? Are you focusing, and I love how you put this, on the social relationships, because that matters so much to retention. You're spot on. So many of these are elements that I have seen in my own coaching practice and my own leadership journey as elements that are neglected, and they're neglected at our peril. You have a sign behind you over your shoulder that says live for yourself. And this is the name of your consulting, right? Live for yourself. I'm curious, that feels at first blush a little selfish. And you've been talking so much about the people that you lead, about your direct reports, about the organization, and like living beyond yourself. Tell me why living for yourself matters so much to you.
Well, it encompasses being proactive instead of reactive. It encompasses self-leadership,
Yeah.
because the people that work for you, if they don't know what really matters to them from work, if they don't know the meaning behind their work, if they don't know what resources they need, and they're doing everything that misaligns with that, then they're going to be, they're going to burn out quick, and they're going to leave. They're going to do terrible work. But if that person does understand exactly what they need, and they're willing to introspect and answer those questions with you, then they're going to be a powerhouse. They're going to be the most productive they've ever been. And you as a leader need to do that for yourself, or you're going to not have boundaries. You're going to be falling on your sword. You're going to be overworking. You're going to be doing things that aren't satisfying to you. And then you're just going to quit. You're going to leave, or you're going to get drained and burnt out. And so living for yourself is really just understanding what you do need from a work environment and making sure that you are focused on that, so that you are productive, so you are effective, so you are efficient, so you can actually continue growing in your career because you're knocking it out of the park. The individuals that are the worst performers are the people that care too much about what other people think. I can't tell you how many leaders I've seen burn themselves out, get resentful, have blow-ups, quit their jobs, all because they weren't actually aligned with who they are as a leader and what they need.
So true. I'm curious, you've been doing this for a little while now, and you've got a good bit of experience and track behind you in working with the clients that you've worked with. What do you wish you would have known about doing what you're doing now before you started?
That's a great question. If I was to go back in time and kind of tap myself on the shoulder and give myself a piece of advice, what would I do? And honestly, I kind of did that, because when I started Live for Yourself Consulting, I actually was coming off of a 5.5-year coaching business that I shut down because it was in a different arena. It was a brand that I didn't want to be a part of anymore. It took me about 1.5 years to rebrand. And so at that point, I tapped myself on the shoulder and told myself, spend a little bit more time making sure the thing you're creating really matters to you. And you're not doing it because it's an opportunity. You're not doing it because it's a way to make some money. You're not doing it. And if you are going to do it because it's just a stint in your life, 3 to 5 years, then treat it that way instead of treating it like something that you're going to do for the rest of your life. And so I went into this new business with that ideology, and that's been really helpful. And so I feel like I've been on a really good path forwards. And if I was to go back in time and tell myself something now, I would probably say, because this is something I learned actually not too long ago, and something I work with clients on, because high achievers tend to worry a lot about finances. I'd say, don't worry so much about the money you're making and how much you have saved. Be more focused on paving the path forwards and making progress in terms of your brand and your skills, because you are safe. You know how to get a job. You know how to make money. And your greatest earning years are actually in front of you. And so now's the time to take some more risks, to make some investments that maybe you wouldn't have made, aka coaching, and see what the world really has to offer. Because when you later on, the opportunities may not be as great as they are now.
Well said. You know, the leaders that I talk to regularly, I find that they read pretty voraciously. And I can see behind you, you've got a number of books on the shelf. Is there a book that you would recommend that's a favorite of yours, that the leaders who are listening, that you would say, hey, if you haven't read this, you really need to check it out?
Oh, I got a couple. Can I give a bunch?
Absolutely. And I'll put links to all these in the
Okay.
show notes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just checking on one of them. So there's this one book called Everyone Deserves a Great Manager, which I
Okay.
really liked. It's very similar to The Making of a Manager. The Coaching Habit and The Advice Trap, I highly recommend. And then I'll give two more. I promise no more than that. One of them is The 9 Lies About Work. It will dispel many, many things that you actually think are true about leadership in this space. And I'd say one more would be Unlocking Leadership Mind Traps.
Mm.
Which is a lesser known but really good book.
I'll put links to those in the show notes. That's fantastic. There is no such thing as too many book recommendations, at least in my life. Just so you know, I'm a big
You
fan.
should see my Kindle to read list is pretty long, so I don't know. I might disagree with you.
That's just hope for the future, right there. That's all I got to say. If
I
you
guess
could,
on that note, by the way, just
yeah.
one more piece on reading is a lot of the leaders I work with doubt themselves.
Mm,
And so they think they need to know more. So they listen to all the podcasts and they read all the books,
mm.
but they're not actually taking that information and implementing it. It's almost like this quick hit of validation around, okay, so I'm going to be better because I'm reading this book. No, I'm not better. I'm not good enough yet. I'm going to get better because I'm reading this book.
So good.
Actually say like, get a little bit more skill focused in what you read and what you do. So if you want to get better at executive presence, read something about executive presence and read one book and then read that book again if you thought it was useful instead of going and finding another book, and then read that book 3 times. Or listen to a podcast just about executive presence and put some of that stuff in action. Pick one thing, try it for 1 week. I think we just move way too quickly when it comes to trying to learn and improve.
Yeah.
And that just leads to a lack of improvement.
That is so true. And I've seen that so many times. I've seen that in my own journey. I just finished a book by Ron Chernow. It's a biography of Ulysses Grant. And it was almost 1,000 pages long. And I went so slowly through that book. I bet it took me 3 weeks to finish it because I was moving so slowly through it because there are so many principles about leadership that I learned from the life of this guy that is not, I think, not one of our better known presidents. And yet there are principles that can be pulled out and learned from. And I was thinking, what is the application? Because it's one thing just to have the information, right? Information is helpful to a point. But until you begin to say, now, what am I going to do with that? Whenever I speak, the 2 questions that I often ask, and I remember hearing these years ago as advice for speakers, and I think it's brilliant. What do I want them to know? And then what do I want them to do? It's got to be both. You can't just be taking in information all the time and never do anything with it. That does not lead to transformation. That just leads to a bobblehead shaped person where your head is just full of information, but your body never moves. If you could share,
Very true.
If you could share one piece of advice, Ben, with the leaders who are listening today as a coach, what would that be?
And what's the goal of the advice? What's the outcome that we're trying to achieve?
To become more catalytic, let's say, to become a leader that makes a difference.
Realize that as a leader, the way you're going to make the most difference is by empowering others to make the most difference.
Yes.
And so stop spreading yourself so thin. Be a role model of boundaries. Have dinner with the wife and hang out with the kids. Don't answer your email on weekends. And then really get to know the people that work for you and then empower them to do their best work.
Brilliantly said. I want every person listening to back this up, listen to what he just said, write it down, and read it every day. Because that is so good. That advice will make a difference in your life and in your leadership. Ben, I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected with you and find out more about the coaching that you do and how they can continue to learn from you. What is the best way for them to do that?
So check out liveforyourselfconsulting.com. There's actually a free guide on that website that will pop up. The 5 secrets to creating a fulfilling career. click that in, download it, take a read. You'll get a few more messages from me. It's also the best way to learn about my podcast, guest appearances like this, different workshops and events. Like, for example, we have a panel event on the secrets of networking. And we have another, I just had an event on executive presence and leading with confidence. So I do those types of free virtual workshops pretty regularly as well. And then if you want to just stay in touch, I post a lot on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Send me a message about what you think it leads to. How do you catalyze leadership, right, in your role? What is something that you do that you think is really powerful and helpful and aligns with what you believe is leadership? And let's just touch base.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I have a couple of requests for you. I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to find this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach who can help you to intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. And stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.